I want to talk about pick 33 tonight. We were going to talk about it last week. We didn't get to it because of the stated debate we got into about the Browns off season. But at pick 33, there is a lot of speculation that the Browns are going to go quarterback there or trade back into the first round to get a quarterback, right? It's been reported that they like Dart, they like Milrow, and they like Shador. So if Shador were to fall, right? And in fact, one of the mocks, Lance Zerline had them taking Carter at 2 and trading up to 24 with the Vikings to get Shador Sanders in his latest mock. Chad Ryder in a 4-round mock at NFL.com had them going Travis Hunter, Josh Connerly, tackle at 33, and then Tyler Shuck at 67, which is kind of gross, I think. But that's the thought around there. And I just kind of want to talk through pick 33, where you guys are at with this, because for me, it should be a starter, right? And so like the Browns are in this phase where they don't want to force quarterback. Jimmy talked about that. He talked about it. He's not putting pressure on and said he wouldn't hold Andrew or Kevin accountable for the lack of a franchise quarterback being available. Unduly accountable was his exact quote, I believe. So he's giving them, he's not forcing them to like rush the process, which is good. So they can take the right player, right? And I think that's a good thing. But at 33, if they, if same as you don't want to reach at a quarterback at 2, I don't think you want to turn around and force it at 33, especially when there's a potential starter there that can help you right away. And I hate the idea of them, you know, I've said this all week. I don't want to feel like they're punting on 2025. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk this through. Q, what do you think they should do at 33? Obviously, you have to play the board, but are you okay with them going quarterback at 33 if they like a Jackson Dart and he's there, or a Jalen Milrow and he's there?
I'm okay with Jalen Milrow at 33 for some very specific reasons. I do think that like Dart would be a reach there at 33. I think that you can make a similar argument with Will Howard, which like it's funny to see Jackson like jump Will, but I think I would prefer Will than Jackson. Hopefully that's not a take that ages like my Kyler Murray over Lamar take, right? So fingers crossed there. But yeah, Jalen Milrow, I think he's a top 40 pick. There's a lot of teams that have him in the top 5 as just pure runners in this class. And he's in the top 3 of most people's quarterback rankings. I think there's a lot to work with him as a passer, but I think a lot of the foundation is pretty good with Jalen Milrow when you watch the tape, right? You're not seeing somebody in his tape who isn't poised in the pocket. You're seeing somebody who has pretty good pocket composure, sometimes too good pocket composure, where he'll let 2 guys get too close to him. You're wondering, why doesn't he get out of there? He's Jalen Milrow. He's super athletic, but I prefer that to the latter, where like with Cam Ward or like Shador, where they're like constantly trying to get out of there, right? And I think he fits what Kevin and obviously Tommy Reese wants to do as a passer. This is a guy who I think excelled when he was on time and told to be on time at Alabama. He needs to work on his accuracy. I think that's the thing that he needs to fix. I think his processing is fine. I think his ability to work through his progressions a lot better than people think. I've seen Jalen Milrow work through his progressions, work back, and then look off his safety so he can get an open lane to a wide receiver in his tape. He's not behind progression wise, right? He can read defenses, progress through things fine. They gave him a lot of responsibility at Alabama. He's been through like 3 different offenses. So I think that part of his game is not as behind as people think. I think it's just the accuracy that he needs to address. Also, I would like to say with Jalen, the floor is much higher than I think people anticipate it being. Because you think of Jalen Milrow, you're like, oh, if he's not able to fix this, he's going to fall off a cliff as a quarterback. But look at the quarterbacks who have really high floors in the NFL, like Justin Fields. Justin Fields, still in the league, still getting starting opportunities, has not proven to be a good passer. Ever. I think Jalen can process as well as Justin, or even better. I think he sees the middle of the field a little bit clearer. He's not as accurate as Justin Fields was, but I really don't see a world where Jalen Milroe can't do what Justin Fields is doing. And even if you draft him, let's say the accuracy never comes along, you can have somebody that you can use like Justin Fields, who could be a starter for you, like he is right now for the Jets. We'll see how that goes with Justin. But, you know, if you have enough around him, you can win games like we saw Pittsburgh win games with him. And I think there's enough there as an athlete for Jalen Milroe that you're going to be able to get production out of him, even if the accuracy never comes along, because this guy is special as an athlete. Like he runs 4.4 flat. I'm telling you on tape, he's so much faster than that 4.4 flat. I've seen him outrun guys who run 4.39 in the combine. Nick and Morar, he outruns him in his South Carolina tape. And that kind of ability, right? We haven't seen somebody that fast since like RG3 came out.
Yeah, he's 4.37, right?
He 4.37 unofficial Alabama, but most of the times kind of where at consensus 4.4 flat.
Okay, gotcha.
But he's definitely faster on tape than what he looks like in the 40, which I always prefer. All of that adds up to a top 40 player for me, where I'm like, this guy has a good chance to become a starter. You know, I think his ceiling is a lot lower than people think. People go to Lamar Jackson with the ceiling. He's not going to ever. There's no world he becomes Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is such a better natural passer. Runner, they're different runners. Lamar, super stop start. You know, he's like an RC car. Jalen Milroe, he is like a bowling ball going downhill way faster than you ever anticipated, right? Like they're just two different styles of runner. That all being said, I think his ceiling is like where, if you go back to 2012, 2013, remember those like couple of years of Colin Kaepernick? I think that's what Jalen Milroe's ceiling could look like if he hits it. I think his floor looks like Justin Fields. So I think the range on him is acute enough to where if you take him at 33, maybe you overdraft him slightly, but there's a chance that you hit on a quarterback there too. And if you don't hit on the quarterback, you have somebody who, you know, a lot of people in this class, I've heard people put him as high as like number 3 as far as running backs go in this class. So you have a lot there you can work with Jalen Milroe. Whereas like if Jackson Dart, if you take him at 33 and he's not good and he's in the UFL in a couple of years, like the guy before him was, then you got nothing. You got nothing. You waste the pick, you punted it, and there's nothing you do there. If Jalen Milroe not accurate enough to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL, you could draft another quarterback and still use Jalen Milroe. Like there's still use for him. So Milroe, I absolutely do not mind the idea of him at 33, but I would agree with that thinking of like, hey, if we're going to go with somebody who is not as unique, versatile, and does not have the projected floor that Milroe has in my mind, then I do have huge concerns because there's going to be good players there, right? Emeka Buka might be there. Elik Ayamaner might be there, right? Luther Burton's been dropping there recently in a lot of mocks. Josh Connerly Jr., which, again, like he's not going to play year one if you draft Josh Connerly Jr., so another guy you'll be waiting a year to start, but could be your future tackle, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land on this. I agree with you for the most part, but I do make a special exception for Jalen Milroe because I think there's something a little bit more exceptional with him that warrants a top 40 pick. And I think he's going to be a top 40 pick.
Sure. Yeah. Jalen is always been intriguing. You know, the thing about Milroe for me is, and he's already kind of proved it this offseason with his work with Jordan Palmer. They were working on his mechanics very, intensely. And then he showed up to his pro day and his mechanics looked a lot better. He just needs to keep drilling it till it becomes innate, right? But like the kid, the person, he's extremely smart. He's a very, very good kid, and the work ethic is out of this world. So I'm willing to bet on the kid too.
Yeah,
and the person.
to that point, yeah, we have to have you get in on here as well. But to add to the point, he also lost 10 pounds between the start of the end of the season and now.
Yeah.
And like got to like a ridiculous body fat number. And
Yeah.
I just keep thinking, like, how does he have time for any of this? Right. Like I couldn't imagine having a master's degree and looking like Jalen Milroe while I'm pursuing a master's degree in 3 years of college. Like, I would be a mess. I would not have time for the gym. He has time to do all of that and be the quarterback at Alabama. There's something unique about that guy's work ethic. I wonder if it translates when he doesn't have structure, military background, Nick Saban, right? Alabama, highly structured environment. But yeah, there is something insane about that dude's work ethic, right? that I think for a guy like him, you're going to be projecting a lot of things he has to work on. You have to factor it in.
Yeah, 100%. Abby, what do you think about pick 33, Jalen Milroe, and are you comfortable what quarterbacks are you comfortable taking there? Are you comfortable taking any quarterbacks there?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much on the same page as what Quincy said, where I'd be comfortable with Milroe, and I think it would be a little bit of a reach for someone like Dart or even Will Howard, who's been thrown out there as well. When I think about Andrew Berry specifically and how he's talked about his thought process with the draft, and he said this since the beginning, that he uses the draft for future needs, not necessarily immediate holes that need to be filled. He looks for free agency and trades for more of those immediate needs. So I think he's kind of shown that he's not going to, take those kind of, I guess, just make those kind of choices that are so risky when he isn't, just like looking towards maybe a foundational piece for the team instead.
Yeah.
So I could honestly see them going like offensive line at 33. I know Connerly was mentioned, maybe Donovan Jackson from Ohio State there potentially. Just because, I think he'll be looking at the state of the current offensive line and how, as soon as next year, there could be multiple pieces from that offensive line gone. And they're going to need to start thinking about the future of that position. So I feel like he could be paying more attention to some position groups that 2-3 years down the line might have more needs rather than addressing something more immediate like quarterback. Now, obviously, I do think it needs to be addressed at some point. I just don't know if he will do it. If he doesn't have a full belief in the guy that he's taking there, I don't think he's going to push it.
We know Pittsburgh is high on Milroe as well. And I wonder what they're thinking at 21. The interesting part here becomes, so consensus wise, I think a lot of people actually have Dart going in the first round. And they have Milroe going either late first round or early second, right? I've seen a lot of mocks. I saw him all the way up at 9 recently. So, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think the arm talent there intrigues some, although I think that's quite a bit of a reach. But I do think it's possible that he ends up going in the first round. And I think it's possible Milroe ends up going in the first round. I mean, if people start reaching, which it would be better for the Browns at 33 if they, that's just going to push a skill player down to them further, the more quarterbacks that go in the first round. But it'll be interesting to see how the board falls in this first round. We all like Will Howard here, right? Like, I think we all like him a lot, probably more than the consensus is, because I think a lot of people think he could be had at like 67 or later.
Right.
So, my concern is kind of to what Jimmy said, right? In his, he was kind of just letting them fly at the owners meeting, right? Being very candid, and talked about, that he's not going to hold the guys accountable for a franchise quarterback not being there, and they will find the guy in the next 1 to 2 years, which, while it's a little bit frightening, does allow for the correct process, right? And my thought, though, is if you're not going to force it at 2, you got to be careful at 33, not trying to make up for that for your fan base who wants you to take a swing on a quarterback. If you don't like him at 33, that's a potential starter. That's a guy that should impact your team right away, and be a 2-contract player. So you got to be really careful. As Q said, like, a wide receiver could fall down there, very valuable. Anybody, offensive line, even if he doesn't start right away, like you pointed out. Abs. So it's just, I feel, and the thing about 33 is too, if they don't trade up, it's that overnight pick, right?
Yeah.
So you also have that element of that pick where overnight, anybody that did fall, your phone's going to be ringing from teams trying to get up and get him at 33 or early in the second round, to start off day 2. Would you be willing to trade back from 33 depending on how the board falls, Q?
Yeah, I think the trade conversation is interesting because I do think if you go Milroe, it's highly likely you call Philadelphia and just do a quick swap to go 32 to get the 5th-year option on him. Probably would not be very expensive. I mean, they have a great relationship, Philly and Cleveland, so that should be able to be worked out. He can just call his brother and figure that one out. But yeah, as far as trading back goes, I think there's going to be some interest for that pick. It depends on what position, right? Because if a quarterback falls, the hot spot is going to be 32, not 33, because everybody's going to be like, well, Cleveland's going to take them if they fall there. At least consensus is going to tell you that Cleveland's going to take them if they fall. Like, let's say Shador almost falls out this first round. The hot spot's going to be late 20s, right? Now, if there's like a good bunch of first-round graded guys up there, then I do think there's going to be some intrigue to trade back. I would tend to go with, as long as there's guys you have a first-round grade on at 33, then take those guys, regardless of position, versus trying to get extra value, because we already got 10 picks in this year's draft. It's more picks than we can likely roster. So the need for extra picks is not there. You have a lot of money invested into this roster, which tells me you think this roster is really talented. So you don't think you need an influx of talent as much as you need more guys on that top end at a younger age, right? So that would point me towards using the higher resources, being aggressive, trading up versus trading back. It's not like the Browns need to fill out this roster. They have a bunch of vets on this team. So I would understand why they would want to trade back, but I think unless they feel like 33 is just a bad spot to take somebody, then they're likely to pick there.